Twinsburg, Ohio, USA. The starting point of our journey through a twins' world. Once a year, twins, mostly the identical variety, gather here from all over the world for a brash, glitzy celebration of their special status.
Okay, we're going to take this picture in just about 30 seconds, just as soon as the bucket gets up to the top.
This time, Twinsburg played host to 3,000 twins.
Hello from Twinsburg, Ohio.
Twins seem to challenge everything we believe about ourselves. That we are unique and individual with the power to choose, with free will.
Country of Greece, our first place winners. We have some beautiful gold medals for you.
But the very oneness of twins seems to suggest that the future is determined at conception, that we remain what we were destined to be.
What are your names?
I'm Colleen and she's Ailey.
These people have been partners since before they were born. Same sex, same genetics, same looks.
It's like an instant club belonging.
Instant family.
Everybody feels like, understands where you're coming from and how you feel, and you instantly can strike up a conversation.
And can connect all these experiences that we've had in common.
We love being around other twins. When we get around them, we really start talking exactly alike.
Yeah, and you kind of get in a clique with other
twins, because you've all been through about the same thing, and you can just have something to talk about.
A lot of people think it might be a threatening thing or a loss of individuality, but to me it's an extreme blessing to have somebody there that you connect with more than anyone else in the world. You just can look into their eyes and you know what they're feeling at that moment. You know that you have unconditional acceptance of each other.
We have a friend for life.
A bonding that single twins don't have. We think the same, we act the same, we go through our lives the same.
Do you find that you have identical thoughts?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Think about it. Never to know a moment of loneliness or privacy. Could you really tolerate someone who looks exactly like you, someone who claims to think your thoughts?
I thought it was just the opposite. We always have somebody to reinforce our thoughts. We feel you're the ones who are unique because you don't have a carbon copy of yourself.
We dressed alike in the house of mirrors, and I ran into a mirror. I thought it was her coming toward me, and I ran into the mirror.
The only one disadvantage is looking at me from the inside out, I feel real young. Then I look at him, and I think, my God, I can't look that old.
Bill and John Reiff are the superstars of this twin universe. Bill and John have won so many awards at twin gatherings that they hold a place of honor in the Guinness Book of Records.
We've been going to the International Twins Convention for about 41 years. And we have got prizes for the most identical twins in the world.
In the world?
And the most medals.
And the most medals of any
medals for the most identical twins, yes.
So you're the world champion twins?
I guess that's what you call it.
Bill and John have shared each other's company since they were together in the womb. They work together, eat together, shop together, sleep together, and no one else has been allowed to intrude into their lives.
We are going to feed the pigs now. It'll take long to do that.
Bill and John seeming capable of separate thought and action. Their speech is a duet.
Ready? Yep.
They move in tandem. The twins are such exact copies of each other that they seem to be one person. A lone eccentric with the chaos around him bearing witness to the dangers of solitude on an isolated farm. This twin partnership seems to lack all the elements that enrich most relationships. The contact between different minds, the sharing of different experiences. Listening to Bill and John together is like eavesdropping on someone talking to himself.
Cream and chicken would be good. Chicken doesn't come in the chicken noodle? Yeah. And what else do we need? Corn, but we have corn.
We have corn. Green beans. Sauerkraut and all that. That should be enough, like on this.
Should we get some tomatoes?
We could.
Yeah.
Only one thing frightens Bill and John as they approach their 70s.
Both of you tell me what would you feel if the unthinkable happened and the other one died and you were left alone?
I mean, it'd be a terrible hard thing to do. If anything would ever happen, and in case anything happened to my brother, Bill, I mean, and we know some other twins that feel the same way we do, the same thing.
Raymond Brandt has known that feeling since the summer of 1949, when he and his twin Robert were working as linemen for a power company. One fateful morning, they were sent out on different squads.
It was about 11 o'clock, and I was up on a power pole and working on electric lines, and I knew that my pole was safe because the lines were de-energized. All of a sudden, I experienced a tremendous electrical jolt that went through my entire body, and instantly I felt my twin's spirit separate from mine. And I knew, in fact, that my identical twin, Robert, had taken the electric shock where he was. And later I learned it was 3 to 5 miles away. And my foreman came to the base of my pole and looked up at me and said, "Come down off of there, please." But I said, "I know why." I said, "My twin's dead." And he seemed quite surprised, and he said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "I felt his shock. I felt his spirit depart from me." This was 47 years ago on July the 5th, 1949, and yet I daily relive my twin's death. This is a photo of my identical twin Robert and I at 5 months of age. This is a photo.
Every photograph Raymond produced featured the twins together in identical dress.
I'll look at this photo and I'll think that I'm on the right viewing it. And then other times I'll look at it and I'll just say, no, that has to be me on the left. But it's no.
It was fascinating to discover that Raymond could not tell us who was Robert and who was Raymond in any of these photographs.
There wasn't a Robert that was distinct and separable from Raymond. There was no way we could define where Robert began and ended, or where I began and ended, nor, more importantly, did we care, nor did we want to. What he felt, I felt, and what I started to say, he finished.
Almost one person.
We were one person, and when he died, it was as if one half of me died.
Since primitive times, this notion of twins as two halves of a divided self has been a cause of fear, curiosity, envy, and fantasy. More recently, the knowledge that twins share all their genes has excited the interests of scientists as well as the popular imagination. At St. Thomas's Hospital, London, identical twins, Dawn and Davina, are scanned to compare skeletal structure and the distribution of body fat. The match is perfect. The research that is being done at St. Thomas's to determine the inheritance of conditions such as osteoporosis and arthritis is helping in the search for specific genes responsible for those conditions. But what happens when the search moves from the body to the mind? Will scientists one day be able to use twin studies to identify genes or a group of genes responsible for violence or sexual preference or driving skills? Some twin researchers believe they will.
Identical twins are a powerful and important research tool because they're one of the few research designs that lets you look directly at genetic effects.
Dr. Bouchard is a psychologist, using twin studies to show that character and intelligence are largely inherited.
None of us is the same height. We all have different eye color, different ear color, slightly different shaped ears, etc. And we know those are genetically influenced. And psychological characteristics are probably influenced in much the same way.
At the University of Minnesota, Dr. Bouchard and his team have used twin studies to build up a remarkable list of characteristics which they say are highly heritable, including aggression, fearlessness, intelligence, happiness, the risk of divorce, political conservatism, and religious fundamentalism.
One colleague has said, these kind of findings are preposterous. Well, I don't blame him for saying that. On its face, that appears to be the case. But sure enough, we found, much like everyone else, that most of the traits that we measure are significantly influenced by genetic factors.
Dr. Bouchard is internationally famous for his work with a special kind of twin. This is Jerry Levy, fire chief in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. Jerry was adopted when he was 3 days old. 30 years later, Jerry discovered that he had an identical twin, Mark, living only 65 miles away. Cases like this were a heaven-sent opportunity for Dr. Bouchard. As the twins had been brought up in different environments, it would suggest that everything they had in common was down to the genes. And would you believe it? Mark, like Jerry, was a fire chief, and the similarities did not end there.
The way we walked, talked, our laughter, the way we hold the beer with our pinkies underneath the glass, our voices are identical. You couldn't tell us apart.
Movies, John Wayne, Laurel and Hardy. What'd you do when you wake up on a Sunday morning? First thing I do is watch cartoons, and then
TV shows we watched, things we did, sports. Basically, almost our whole job history was parallel. You know, we both worked in supermarkets. We both worked in gas stations at basically the same time.
I went to school studying forestry. He was working for the town
as a tree climber.
Was that a bit unnerving to find that you had all those similarities between you?
Spooky.
Twilight Zone.
We like to believe that we have a hand in shaping who we are. But Mark and Jerry's experience suggests that it's all predetermined, in the genes. Or does it?
The family, the home life was the same.
Almost identical.
He had a sister, had a little brother.
We were both brought up in middle-class Jewish families.
Blue-collar workers.
Taught the same values.
So you were brought up in very similar environments?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that may have as much to do with it as the fact that you're genetically similar.
Possibly. Like I said, that's up for the doctors to decide.
At the University of Minnesota, they have decided, concluding from their twin studies that human beings were not born to be equal, Dr. Lickin is on the Minnesota team.
I think there's no question that society will always be stratified at various levels of ability. I think that that's not only inevitable, but it's a good thing. We live, after all, in a meritocracy, and the whole purpose of a complex society is a division of labor. And the more successful it is in getting the competent people at the top doing those important jobs that require, for example, a high IQ, the better off for all of us.
Ideas like these strike at the heart of a democratic ideal, the belief that all men and women, whatever their origins and backgrounds, are capable of excellence, given the freedom and the opportunity. The alternative view coming out of modern twin research that success and failure are largely predetermined in the blood is fiercely contested by those whose own experience gives them a right to speak out.
I think that is absolutely obscene. I have no words to describe how angry that makes me. And if they are trying to prove that everything is genetic, oh God, that is a red flag should go up in front of everybody who ever hears about it.
Eva Kor has survived one of the darkest chapters in the history of twins. In the 1930s and 40s, Nazi scientists, in many cases inspired by British and American twin research, argued that the social problems of their day, poverty, crime, underachievement, alcoholism, were in fact medical problems, passed down to successive generations through bad genes. The rationale for much of this was highly suspect data obtained from twin research, a scientific obsession that reached its grotesque climax at Auschwitz concentration camp, where the notorious Dr. Mengele was able to collect twins in quantities never before available to science. When they were 9 years old, Eva and her sister Miriam became Mengele twins.
From the time I was born, my destiny was sealed, as was the destiny of every child who was born Jewish in Europe in the 1930s and 1940s. My only luck was that I was born a twin, and that there was this doctor, as crazy as it may be, but who was interested in researching twins. Otherwise, if that didn't happen, I would not be here to tell my story.
Mengele's twins were used to study the effects of poison gases and lethal viruses. One twin, in this case Eva, would be infected and left to die. The other twin would be kept alive until that moment. Mengele paid daily visits to the infected twins, taking a sadistic pleasure in counting off the days or hours they were expected to live. But in Eva's case, Nazi science could not predict the strength of a child's will.
Mengele came in with 4 other doctors, looked at my fever chart, and laughed and said sarcastically, "Too bad. She's so young. She has only 2 weeks to live." I made a silent pledge that I would do anything in my power to prove him wrong, to survive, and to be reunited with Miriam. I had no idea what I had to do. I have no idea how exactly I survived. But I know one thing. Would I have died? Mengele would have taken my twin sister to kill her with an injection to the heart, and then he would have done the comparative autopsies. So what he was doing really is using identical twins to see how the germs worked, by injecting one with a germ and then killing the other one.
No one claims to have seen the results of Mengele's research, and Eva cannot explain the purpose of other experiments obsessively devoted to the measurement of brain size and every physical dimension.
3 times a week, they would place 10 or 20 sets of twins naked for 6 to 8 hours, most of the day. They would measure every part of my body, measure the size of the nose, the shape of the nose, compare it to chart, compare it to the other twin. I remember they used to take this instrument, press them against my skull. I hated those instruments. The only way that I could cope with it was by blocking it out. I remember feeling like I was just a living piece of meat.
Today, some of the tests that Eva Kaur remembers in her nightmares are still being performed, though in vastly different circumstances. Certainly no one at the University of Minnesota believes that whole groups of people should be eliminated, and the twins who come here to be tested are willing volunteers.
Thank you.
Can there be any reason, then, to feel nervous about this line of research?
There have always been people who don't want us to study this, don't want us to explore that. I think we've been capable of dealing with all the kinds of discoveries that scientific research have generated. There have been some close calls. The atomic bomb's a terrible kind of a thing. Nuclear power can be dangerous. It may be that knowledge about genetic influences could be dangerous and misused. I think the real question is, do we try to understand why we function the way we do, or do we close our mind and say, no, we've made these previous judgments and the facts are irrelevant?
Are you ever worried that the results of your research and your findings might be misused?
Oh, I do worry about it on occasion. I must say I don't worry an awful lot, because any results can be misused.
In fact, behavioral studies of twins have already been cited by politicians to justify cuts in social spending in these cost-conscious times. Why waste money trying to rehabilitate the criminal or educate the disadvantaged if scientists can show that the problems are genetic and therefore insoluble? Why agonize over the growth of an underclass if human failure is written in the genes? Eminent scientists reject these arguments and are particularly critical of assumptions based on behavioral studies of twins. But it is the twins themselves who question the first premise on which much of the research is based.
There is no way that two twins who are identical genetically are identical in their behavior. So they can measure all the bone sizes and the skull sizes. That does not make two people exactly the same. There is not one single set of twins that I have met in Auschwitz exactly the same. Always one of them was dominant and was the leader, and the other one was the follower. If I compare myself to my twin sister, we are completely different. One became one kind of a person and the other one another kind of a person. But that was not genetic.
Eva's testimony was a challenge to go back to the start of our journey and look at twins in a fresh light. Ealing, West London. Every 2 weeks, parents of young twins come together for a social and mutual support.
Coming through, just mind the heads, mind the heads, mind the heads. Be careful,
Alexei. Elizabeth Davis is mother of identical twins, Hannah and Laura.
I can't think of a single way in which Laura and Hannah are the same. From the moment they were born, their personalities just shone through. You know, when I came round from the anaesthetic and I looked in their faces and they were so different, and I could tell they looked at me in a different way. Even those first few days, they asked different things from me. The very thought of twin research makes me go cold. I mean, I can feel my flesh creep. None of the information has ever been helpful to twins or their families. Twins were simply used as a research tool. The assumption was that they are clones, they're genetically identical, that their environments are identical. Now, I agree their physical environment is the same. That's absolutely correct. But the research ignores the fact that their parents relate to the children in different ways. And I relate to Laura in a completely different way to the way I relate to Hannah. She asks it of me, and I give it to her.
There's a duck with some bubbles. There's bubbles on the duck.
They are so profoundly different. What people do is expect them to be the same. There is a lot of pressure, cultural pressure, for the children to be identical. People expect them to be dressed the same, and because they're not, they assume they're a boy and a girl, for example. We have never dressed the twins identically, and Laura and Hannah have always been, from birth, in different clothes. I don't mean slightly different, I mean entirely different, really. How can a child believe that it's an individual when it looks across the room and sees itself reflected even in clothes?
Little mouse.
I feel a great sense of unease as a mother when I see twins dressed the same. I know it's a strong thing to say, but I think it's cruel. I really think it's cruel.
Are twins really as different in character as a mother claims? Can we believe that the shared personality is an illusion? That twins only dress alike and conform because others expect it of them? Or is there a more complex truth? Perhaps there's an important clue to be found here. On a December evening in 1964, police and ambulance men were called to this apartment in Southern California. As they entered the building, a young man ran out to meet them. He was distraught, introducing himself only as Tim. Tim told the police to follow him to his apartment. It was to be the first of many surprises, for this was the owner's apartment, which one entered through an office. The whole building, the police discovered, belonged to 22-year-old Tim. In the sitting room, Tim hung back, gesturing the officers towards this corridor. He immediately withdrew into the kitchen and poured himself a stiff vodka. The police and ambulance men approached this room. Lying on the bed was Tim's exact double, with one difference. This young man was dying. On the floor nearby lay a .22 caliber Winchester rifle. Tim had shot his identical twin brother, Todd, in the heart. At 11 p.m. that night, Tim was arrested and taken to the Temple City police station. 2 days later, on December the 9th, 1964, Timothy Wills Nicholson was arraigned on the charge that he did willfully, unlawfully, and with malice aforethought murder Todd Nicholson, a human being. After 33 years, Timothy Nicholson has agreed to break his silence and talk frankly about the death of his twin brother.
I want to know from you why you've agreed to talk to us.
That I hope that a family can understand what happened in my life, and if they see that same pattern developing, and they can see the terrible tragedy that happened between Todd and Tim because of the way they were raised, and prevent a similar tragedy, then this is all worth it.
The trial of Tim Nicholson opened at the Pasadena Supreme Court on May the 3rd, 1965. The case had all the sensational ingredients. Tim and Todd were rich kids related to 3 powerful Chicago dynasties. At age 18, they had received $1 million between them from a family trust fund. But even more sensational, Tim and Todd, rich killer and rich victim, were identical twins. In the absence of any clear motive, the trial turned into a public dissection of a twin relationship. If Tim and Todd were 2 halves of a divided self, it was evidently a schizophrenic self. The court heard how since infancy the twins had always been dressed alike, always squeezed so tightly into the same mold that they had to break free but could not break free. It was an extraordinary story of love and hate, of mutual dependence and bitter rivalry which continued through school, in relationships and in business, where Todd failed, where Tim succeeded.
We always competed. Always. It was always one-upmanship, always one brother competing against the other brother. It's just, that's the way we were raised.
So what is your warning? What is your don't to parents of twins?
Let them be individuals. Don't try to dress them alike. Don't try to make them into a clone. Let them be themselves, and don't pit one against the other.
One of the big problems when you came into money was that you were much more successful than he was.
He had a real difficult time with that, because we both wanted to be successful. We certainly didn't want to be parasites to a trust fund. And so we both went out there in the world, and as young boys, to try and do something worthwhile and be proud. And he kind of fell down. And I fortunately didn't. And that just created a tremendous amount of animosity on his part.
But the more you succeeded, the angrier he became.
The more violent he became. I mean, you know, he was the older brother by 2 minutes, and he's definitely imposed his authority.
Called to the stand, witness after witness, including Todd's girl Rita and the boy's mother, testified that Todd, the victim in this case, was in fact the aggressive twin who had savagely assaulted his brother on many occasions. On the night in question, the defense argued, Tim had genuine reason to fear his twin brother.
I'd finally come to the point in my life with him that he wasn't going to be pushing me around anymore. It's that simple. Well, what happened was, he reacted. He had his pistol sitting there, and he said, "You son of a bitch." And he went for his pistol. And I shot him in self-defense. And when I ran out of that room, I didn't think he was hurt. When I ran out of the room, I was thinking, I'm going to get shot in the back.
How did you hear that Todd had died?
The police came, and then I was sitting there, and they brought Todd out in this gurney. And he had a little bit of blood here, and I saw him. It's the last time I ever saw him. And I thought he was hurt. And I went to him, and they held me back. And I said, "He's hurt. He's going to be all right." And they said, "Yeah, he's going to be all right." And he wasn't. That's the last time I ever saw him. It was self-defense. But I don't want to talk about it, you know?
Tim, after all these years, you still feel very powerful emotions about it.
Wouldn't you? You know, you kill somebody, it's bad enough. But to kill your identical twin, whew, and then stand trial for murder for it.
On June the 9th, 1965, the jury in the Nicholson trial reached a unanimous verdict. A month later, Tim Nicholson was sentenced to between 1 and 10 years in prison for manslaughter.
I'd lay there in that cell, and I'd say, "Well, Todd, let's get through this one."
You find yourself, all these years later, still communicating with Todd?
Once in a while.
What do you say to him?
Well, I know he's forgiven me. That's it.
In 1968, after 3 years in prison, Timothy Nicholson was released on probation. Just 5 weeks later, he married Todd's former girlfriend, Rita. The twin relationship seems as variable as any human relationship. For every case of destructive rivalry, there's an equally compelling example of harmony and mutual support. Karine and Sarah only started on the trapeze when they were 16 years old. By the time they were 20, they were world-class performers, an achievement they attribute entirely to the strength of their twin bond.
First, the act is about us, about twins' relationship, and being twins was something strong since the beginning, and we wanted to tell them that trust and love between two people can exist. And we can use it without fighting. We can use it to be really confident, to have confidence. That's something we want to show, the confidence. Sometimes it's so hard because I don't want to drop my sister and I get suddenly scared, but I'm scared too. So if she's too scared, I will say, I'm scared too, and then she's gonna say, no, don't be scared, I catch you. Yeah, that's a trick we do. I can even feel what she feels, even if it's just the feet that's connecting. Because we know each other so much, we are so much together, and we just look at each other and we talk with the eyes.
We've talked a lot about similarities. Do you feel there are differences between you?
Yes.
In what way?
We are so different, yes. We know it, yeah. We are the opposite. We just started with the trapeze act to understand that we are completely different. Yeah. I'm the strongest one and she's the more flexible. Yeah. I'm left-handed, and I'm right-handed. And I feel that the right part of my brain works more than my left because she's really artistic and I'm really based on the ground. Right. So we really feel that we are two persons completely the opposite, but together we make something strong. Together we always push and go higher than somebody else. Alone we would not have done it. Together we are very strong.
Do you feel your relationship is going to change as you get older?
Me, I don't wish. I wish it stays the same.
But what about boyfriends, eventually marriage, eventually having families?
That's just going to be something to share with my sister. And she's going to see my kids and she's going to love them, I'm sure. And yeah. I'm going to love her kids and it's going to be great, just great.
You're never going to feel slightly jealous if Sarah forms a close relationship?
No, I'm going to be so happy. We had boyfriends and it was really not a problem. It's the only problem is to be with the boyfriend as happy as we are with the twins. It's so hard. But we will never be. That's impossible. No.